Now that we have a clean slate, we're ready to start building some pieces that we can use later. So in this video, we're going to be putting the materials in place, and in the next video, we'll build the material schedules. So let's get started. So if I click on materials, we have a nice organized library. And what I want to do is I want to build a library of cherry, plywood, and pre-finished UV. And I encourage you to follow along even if that isn't relevant to you, because it'll be easy for you to copy from these to build out, TFL or Egger or whatever you're going to be using in your case. So I'm actually going to delete everything except my 3/4 cherry ply. And so now we have one piece of cherry plywood, one solid cherry board stock, and no banding. And before I start adding my different plywoods, I need to put some textures in place. Because if you've worked with me before, you know I'm very adamant about giving a nice visual representation. And this helps whoever's drafting the job, whoever's engineering it, just helps them give them that visual feedback of which way the part is facing, does the part have edge banding, and I just think it's really important to get that foundation. So to do that, I have a few textures that I want to add before I go into this. So Cabinet Vision does come with a few stock textures, and I'm going to go ahead and add a new one. And I'll actually add this to this video that you'll be able to download just so you can follow along with this lesson. So I have a folder on my desktop, and it's called Textures, and I'm going to grab this pre-finished UV texture. Pre-finished UV. I'm not going to put a description. Tile means the image is going to repeat as often as you tell it. So here it's going to be 24 by 24. This is a seamless image, so it's going to work fine. Seamless means as I stack blocks of this, like on a tall cabinet, like say an end panel, I won't see the line as it tiles different times. And we'll get into that when we get into a job. But this image is seamless, so I'm going to put it on tile. And then decal means it does not blend with the finished color. And I want to check that for my pre-finished UV because I never want it to change, based on a finished color. So I'll add that. And then I'm also going to add one called backside ply. So again, I'll go to my desktop. And if you're trying to add your own images, just keep an eye on this little filter down here. I actually have BMP files, but if you have JPG, you will have to change that filter. So let's grab backside ply, and I'll just call it backside ply. And I'm not going to tile, actually I'm going to do a decal on this because I want it to be this gray color. That way the drafter can see that this is the back side and it's not intended to be finished. And so throughout this video, it's going to be a little bit kind of just putting pieces in place. There's not going to be a lot of exciting stuff happening. But in the next video or two, you're really going to start seeing this all come together. So bear with me here. Okay, so now, first thing we want to do is we want to get this first piece of panel stock kind of how we want it. And then I'll start copying from it as we need different sizes. So I'm actually going to do 3/4 two-sided cherry ply. And I would encourage you to keep a consistent naming scheme. I'm okay with what Cabinet Vision uses by default. The size, the thickness of the plywood, whether it's one-sided or two-sided, the species, and then always end in ply so I know it's a panel product. I like that naming scheme, but you can, just so you're consistent with it. And then description, always keep just the species name. Because when we get into filters here later on, I'm going to be looking at description to be able to tell me what all is actually using cherry. So we want to make sure we name these all exactly the same, relevant to their species. I'm going to skip over the rest of these pricing fields. Grain depends, yes. Size, we can set it to the exact size. I'm going to leave it on 3/4. Keep an eye on, normally if I'm messing with sizes, I want to be in decimals because otherwise, say this is 0.74. If I had it on 32nd, I wouldn't even see it. So when you're in some of these more precise fields, just be careful with the rounding situation. For this example, I'm just going to leave it on even 3/4. Okay, so like I mentioned, Cabinet Vision does come with a few stock textures, so I'm just going to choose cherry on the front and back because this is two-sided. And then I'm going to do blank on the edges. Sometimes I will also do like a plywood texture on the end grain, but blank works just as good. And I'm almost finished. If you've used Cabinet Vision before, you know there's 3 modes when you're working in a job. You can be in wireframe mode, or fill mode, or texture mode. And so not only do I want to set up the textures so I can see what's going on, I also want to set up the finishes. And because for myself, I find myself switching between those three, wireframe, fill, and texture mode quite a bit. If this doesn't mean anything to you, you'll see once we get into a job, you'll see why this is all important later. So, having said that, I like to assign a gray color to the ends or the edges of my plywood. And that means that I'm going to easily be able to see if a plywood, which edges have edge bending. Because in texture mode, it won't have texture, and then in finish mode, it's going to be this gray color on the ends. So I'm going to go to finishes, and I'm going to find just kind of a dark gray color, and I'm going to copy it, and I'll call it plywood edge. And then I want to assign that to both of these edges and ends. And again, this is that visual representation that's going to help you, your drafters, your engineers, all the way through the process. Okay, now the front and back, because it's two-sided, I want both of these to be automatic. And what that's going to do is, if I pick like a light stain or a dark stain, it will blend with the texture that I chose. Okay, so that's good. Now we're ready to start copying. So we'll do 1/2 inch, two-sided, and then we'll do 1/4 inch, one-sided. And because I have everything set up, my description is fine, green is fine, just got to change the size. And the 1/2 inch two-sided is going to be fine texture and finish wise. However, I do need to change the back for the 1/4 inch because this is one-sided. I don't want to put cherry on the back side. So here's where that back side ply comes into play. Remember we just imported this? So what this is going to do is it's going to have a nice cherry texture on the front and then this gray kind of maple-ish texture on the back side, and it's going to help you know which way to face the parts if you're adding them manually. And then similar to what I do with the plywood edges, I want to also put this kind of a lighter gray finish color on the back side of the part. So I'm going to go see if I can find a lighter gray color. This System Ash Gray will be fine. And I'll just call this plywood backside. Okay, and then I'll assign that here. There we go. So we got the darker gray on the edges, and then if a plywood is unfinished on one side, it's going to have this light gray color. So again, if you haven't used Cabinet Vision, you may be a little confused between finishes and textures, but it will add up once we're able to go into a job and see these in place. Okay, so cherry is going to be finished. Now, like I mentioned, I want to do cherry on the exterior, and I want to do a pre-finished plywood on the interior. So I'm going to go ahead and copy from my cherry ply. And I'm going to say this is pre-finished UV. And I'm going to say it's two-sided. And here I want to change my description to be my species name. And size will be fine. The finishes I'm going to have to change, and the textures I'm going to change. So let's put that pre-finished UV on the front and back. And I'm actually, because this is a pre-finished thing, I don't want this to be on automatic. So as I pick darker or lighter colors in the job, I don't want it to blend with the pre-finished UV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find kind of a light, maybe like a birch. Yeah. I'm going to copy this and call this pre-finished plywood. And this means that whether I'm in texture mode or fill mode, I'm going to be able to see that this is pre-finished plywood. And again, until you get into a job, you might be scratching your chin at why we're doing all these steps. Again, this video is titled Building the Pieces, and that's exactly what we're doing. Here, just very shortly, you're going to see this all come together. Okay, so there's our UV. Now I can copy a couple different sizes here. So I'm going to we'll do 1/2 inch two-sided UV, and we'll do a 1/2 inch one-sided UV, and a 1/4 inch one-sided UV. Okay, the description copied down, that's great. Grain depends, yes. Just put these sizes in place. And finishes, it's going to be pretty good. I need to change a couple of these one-sided plywoods. These two will have a backside plywood finish color. And again, that's because these are one-sided and top two are two-sided. Okay, and then we can get our textures the same. So put that backside ply on the backside of those one-sided ones. Okay, so we have our panel stock category finished. Now I'm going to go to board stock, and I actually don't need anything else. This 3/4 solid cherry will be enough. And then under banding, I need to add a new one. So I'll click new, and I'm going to call it cherry, and then I'll just use EB for edge banding. And then we'll just give it the exact species name as we talked about earlier. I'm going to switch to millimeters and say this is 1 millimeter thick edge banding. And then we can look at a few of the finishes. So we don't want system copper. Anytime you're dealing with a part that can potentially have a finish, like a paint or a stain, you want it to be on automatic. And texture, we want it to be cherry because that's what the material is. And then let's copy this and make this pre-finished UV edge banding. And give it our name. And then for the texture, because I don't want this to blend, I want to go give this, I think I named it plywood pre-finished, yeah. And I'll give it my pre-finished UV texture. Okay, hopefully you are all still sticking with me. If you have Cabinet Vision, I would highly encourage you to build these out with me. Rewatch parts of the video as you need to, because I know I went kind of fast through that. But once you do a couple of these, once we built this cherry and UV, it's going to be so easy for you to just copy this. You know, say we wanted to add walnut materials. Well, now we have everything in place. Everywhere I see cherry, I would just copy it and rename it to walnut and change the textures. So what we want to do with this video is I'm creating template materials, giving you an understanding of how I go about adding these. And then what we have is we have these nice pieces that we can copy and continue to build off of as we introduce new materials and new species. Okay, and the last thing before we get into the next video of adding material schedules, I want to put a couple filters or searches. Because if you'll notice, right now I have to click into each of these categories to find all my cherry parts or my UV parts. Okay, so if we hover over this icon that says add search and we click new, I'm going to add, this is the name of the label that's going to show up here in the sidebar. So I'm going to put pre-finished UV. Now it's going to ask us, what does the filter search for? It's going to be description equal to. You can also do similar to or some other filters, but I think equal to pre-finished UV. That would have not worked well. And it's important that you type in exactly what you want here. It might be wise just to highlight and copy before you come in. Okay, so if description is equal to pre-finished UV, now it adds this little label here that I can click on, and when I click on it, it will show it'll show the edge banding, the panel product, and board stock or anything that has this exact description. So this gives us a little quick head start, especially when we get into assigning material schedules in the next video. So I'm going to add another one called cherry. I'm going to say description equal to cherry. Now I have two. So if I click cherry, it shows the edge banding, the board stock, and everything related to cherry. Okay, so we have our pieces in place. In the next video, we're going to start mapping those materials to Cabinet Vision parts, and those are called material schedules. So see you there.